I'm super happy right now because I am joined by one of my fellow friends in this industry, Ania Hammar. How are you?
Hi, I'm so good. I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me on. Seriously, this is going to be so fun.
Yeah, welcome to the cozy space. This is where we get very real with our feelings.
It's gorgeous. Yeah, when you mentioned, you're like, do you want to come on and talk about mental health? I was like, talk about my feelings? Absolutely.
Yeah, because, if there's any two girls in this industry that really like to talk about their feelings, I think it would be you and I.
I think it's us. Yes, we're like that girl from Mean Girls, at the in the gym scene. I just have a lot of feelings,
Yeah, and I also think I have some Janice energy also. I'm really spicy.
I love that. We got to be a little spicy. Big feelings comes with big spice, okay?
Exactly. So we got big feelings, we got big spice. But I want to tell the people I know about you and your role and things that you've done, but give a little bit of background on who you are, where you're at, how you got to where you are kind of thing, just so we can get a little perspective here.
Little context, absolutely. Originally from Massachusetts, came down to Nashville in 2008 to go to Belmont University. Did the artist thing for a little while, realized that is the hardest thing in the world. And I said, no thanks, after about 5 years. In a 10-year town. But anyways, kind of fell into hosting when I was kind of at that crossroads, leaving, music professionally behind and really like wondering what I was going to do with my life and stuff. And then I ended up getting hired by a company here in town called Taste of Country. They're like a country music news outlet. And I was their on-camera host and producer for like 3 years, I think. And that's when I just really fell in love with hosting. And now I have been at SiriusXM for about 5 years. And I work on our like top 40 country channel called The Highway. And it's been a blast. I love it. I love it so much.
Oh, yeah. That was a great little wrap up. Just your whole life spiel down into like 2 seconds.
Right. Well, it's like it has been a very, very, very long winding road. And of course, the older I get, the longer the story gets. So I figured out a way to just like, let's bullet point this, Ania.
Yeah. But there's so much more to that. And you've had a lot of experiences in your life to speak to some of the mental health sides of this. So what do you feel like, because you didn't really plan to be in this industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like for you wanted to be an artist and now you're on the other side of it. For me, it was that I had planned to do TV and now I'm in radio and like life just, comes at you in a different way sometimes.
Yeah, totally.
What's the hardest thing that you've experienced changing careers?
Oof. Yeah. Tons of imposter syndrome and a lot of worrying too much about what other people are going to think about this jump. So going back to like when I was 25 years old and since since I came out the womb, I was singer. That was my entire identity. And I was singer. I'm going to be a famous singer. I was, I grew up in a small town. And so, as you know, you're like big fish in a small pond. And then you move to Nashville and you go to a school like Belmont and everybody around you is an incredible singer. And then you start to get to know the industry a little bit more. You get to know the ins and outs of it. And you start to see things that you're like, oh, I don't think that I want to do that. Like my biggest thing was realizing just how much I would be gone from home. And like the older I got, the more I realized I was like, oh, wow. Like I really like my couch and my dog and my house and like...
Those things are not on the road.
Yes, like having creature comforts and like, it's really easy to look at one of our artists that we get to champion in this industry and think that like everything's all good. They're comfortable on the road. And the reality is for a very, very long time until you get to that top, echelon of things, you're in buses, you're in vans at first.
Yeah, cars to vans to buses.
Yeah. Exactly. But anyways, circling back to just kind of, when I was about 25 years old and was just so beat down by the nose, by the like trying to gain just like an ounce of success and progress in this town and move towards that goal of being on more stages and building the platform and all this kind of stuff. I was just hearing a lot of no's, and I got to a really, really, really bad place mentally when I was trying to make it happen. It wasn't working. And it was just like, you're not enough. You're not enough. You're not enough. You're not enough. You're not strong enough. You're not good enough of a singer. You're not motivated enough. Like, it was just like the negative self-talk was impossible to turn down at that point. And so changing careers was very scary, especially since I changed careers from being in this chair as like the artist chair to the completely opposite chair, saying, okay, now I'm just completely opposite from where I always thought I was going to be sitting.
Yeah. You're now putting the spotlight on other people versus having the spotlight on you.
Yes. Yeah. Which I now love, but going through that was very, very scary because I told people in my life that music wasn't making me happy anymore. And that was the truth. I was at one of the lowest points in my life when I was going through that kind of like breakup, quarter life crisis, not to sound like a complete drama queen, but it was really, really hard to say this thing is not making me happy anymore. I'm going to move on to something else. And what I really struggled with was worrying that people were going to think that I was weak. I just couldn't make it. And now I'm like using this as an excuse, all of the things, like the meanest things that I could say to myself. I promise you, I was saying them to me.
Well, you're feeling a lot of shame.
Yeah.
Because naturally that's what we're told when we fail. There's shame associated with that. Instead of it being like this bright, shiny, hey, guess what? You're going to get to do some really cool things because this isn't what you were supposed to do.
Yeah. So I hope that answered your question. I just went in like a billion different circles.
No, it did. I am curious. Like, we get to really deep levels on here. Do you feel like this negative self-talk was part of you before you ever tried to pursue being an artist? Like, was this a part of you as a kid?
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, I think that I'm just a perfectionist inherently. Do you know much about the Enneagram?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I'm an Enneagram 3. And
Okay.
so
The
it's
achiever.
like the achiever. Yeah. So my entire life, I have been big personality, gonna go and do big things, obsessed with, doing the cool thing so that I could feel love. Like, that's kind of the base of the achiever, the base of the Enneagram. It's a lot of what I think I deserve love for is like what I do. And so it's taken a lot of therapy and a lot of time to kind of unpack those feelings and realize that like the people in my life who are going to love me because of who I am, and the friendships and the love that I give to them and like all of the things that I am as opposed to what I do. And that was a really difficult thing for me to go through and accept and learn, because I thought, if I'm not doing the cool thing anymore. And I remember when my husband and I first started dating, I was going through this transition from, pursuing an artist career. He works in music as well. He was watching me go through it and come home crying every single day and all this kind of stuff. And I said, if I decide to like go and be a librarian, are you going to still love me? And shout out to librarians. Y'all are amazing. And I love you. It's just that to me is just so different from what I always said I was going to do. Mm-hmm. One is not inherently better than the other, of course. But like, I didn't know if I would be the same person to him if I decided to completely change course. And of course he was like, are you kidding me? Like, I don't love you because you're a singer. I don't love you because you're chasing an artist career. Like, I love you for this, and that, all that. So
it sounds like he helped you heal in ways that you didn't know you were going to need help in healing.
Yes, absolutely. He's been quite the rock. I love him so much. But he, hung with me through just like the hardest period of my life, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. When your entire identity is one thing, and then that thing starts to make you really, really unhappy, it's very difficult to know like where to turn next.
Yeah, and I think everybody experiences at one point in their life or another an identity crisis.
Yeah.
they have this, what am I doing with my life? What's happening? Who am I? What does any of this mean?
Yeah.
If you've never had that, then you're so lucky.
Yeah.
But I do think everybody experiences it at least once.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's such a, when I have shared bits and pieces of this story and through everything that I share, and I'm sure you feel the same way. I'm curious if you do. The more I share, the more connected I feel to people, because the more Me Too moments I get to have with the people that we reach with our platforms. And that is the joy of my life. Like,
yes.
Yeah.
Connection is everything.
Yeah.
So much of where we're at feels disconnected.
Totally.
So to be able to share something and feel connected with people you may never, ever meet in person.
Yeah.
And for them to be like, oh my gosh, you said things that nobody else has ever said.
Yeah.
Or this is me. How did you know? What, like, those experiences feel so personal and so important.
Yep.
Like, that's, I don't know if you also feel this, but I go, this is what I was here for.
Yes.
This is the reason.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
If there's nothing else I do good, there's nothing else I accomplish or whatever, this is what I was here for.
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think that that's what I fell in love with and realized what I loved about music and singing. I realized that I could do the thing I loved most about being on stage as a host, just in a different way. And like my voice and my music is so precious to me that I'm so happy that I just get to like keep that for myself right now. Who knows what will happen with it in the future? But doing what I do now, I still get to have those human connections. And I mean, we talk with our country artists all the time about like, that's their favorite part about being on stage. Mm-hmm. That's their favorite part about meeting fans out on the road and stuff. And we get to do that part too a lot of the time, which is just such a blessing. It's awesome.
But also, isn't it kind of ironic that something that makes us feel so disconnected also makes us feel connected, and that's social media? Because you can get on there and feel very imposter syndrome.
Oh,
you can feel depressed. You can feel angry. You can be happy.
Yeah.
But then there's this other side where you get to connect with people that you've never met. And it's so hard to see something that is so good and so bad at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's a blessing and a curse for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, like the more we build it, the more of both good and bad is going to come into our platform, into our spaces, into our community and stuff. But I don't know about you, but like, I wouldn't trade it.
No.
Like I wouldn't trade the sharing and the sometimes, getting, whatever comes through our DMs. I wouldn't want that to go away, because then the good stuff would go away too.
And the one thing I always held true to is like, if I help one person, then this is enough.
Yes, exactly.
And that still is true for me today.
Yeah.
It sounds like true for you too.
Absolutely. And we have our harder days, right? Like sometimes we can say that like with our whole chest, and then other days you're exhausted and you're beat down and you're sad and you don't feel your strongest. But what I've realized is, we get a lot of messages about thank you for what you do. Thank you for what you talk about, being so open and honest and so real, yada, yada. But I think what I try to tell people in those moments is like, you guys hold me up on my hard days.
Yeah.
Like we get to connect with people very often. I'm posting about something that I've been through and hoping that someone reading it is going to be like, oh my gosh, I feel so seen by this. But then I feel seen by our listeners and friends and stuff on socials.
They'll send me reels and stuff that they think will matter to me and what I'm going through.
It's so sweet. It's
That's
so sweet.
cool.
Yeah, it's such a two-way street,
To think that there's strangers out there that want to connect in that way is really beautiful.
And it reminds you that there like really are so many beautiful people in the world.
Mm-hmm. And that's really hard to feel some days.
Yeah.
But most of the time, they're there.
Yeah.
We just like to hang out sometimes. Maybe, experience life a little less on certain days.
Exactly.
So for you, what are some of the things that you've experienced in the mental health space? So, for me, I've dealt with depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts. Those are my 3 kind of big trifecta, if you will.
Yeah.
What are some of those for you, if any?
Yeah, absolutely. So anxiety is absolutely something that I think I struggled with, I mean, for much longer before I actually like started going to therapy for it. Anxiety and depression. I think that the depression stuff really started through that transition that we've been talking about in my life and just kind of leaving music behind and stepping into this new space. Anxiety very much comes from my like craving of control. I've realized mine is like, they always say that anxiety is about like worrying in the future about what's going to happen, next, and focusing on the like right now is a great way to curb it. As difficult as like way easier said than done. But for me, it's been a lot of like trying to control things that are completely out of my control. Being a perfectionist absolutely contributes. People pleaser also, of course, factors into it. So anxiety and depression definitely. And then I also in 2021 experienced my first bout with burnout and really, really crashed and was in the lowest point that I've ever been in my life, because it just all came crashing down after, smiling and nodding and surviving, not thriving for months on end in a situation that was just really wearing on me. My body paid for it. And it's like, it was wild. It was really wild. And I had to dig myself out of that and it took months and medicine and therapy and crying and slowing down when I didn't feel like I could slow down.
And I would imagine that depression, anxiety came in because it always likes to come in when you are at your lowest moment. So you're experiencing all of it at the same time.
Totally. Yeah. In 2021, I think it was like throughout that summer, I started really feeling, I would wake up every morning super nauseous because as soon as I opened my eyes, my anxiety was so high about what was going to happen in the day ahead, what I had to get done, what I was going to have to deal with, all of that. I felt so physically ill from the anxiety and the burnout. It was miserable. And, when we have those miserable days, like we keep fighting through it because we have to, like obviously, and there's so many people that struggle with this and show up with a smile on their face and like they go and do the job, whatever it is, whether it's outward facing like ours is or not. And I woke up basically crying every single day, nauseous, finally got on some antidepressants and anti-anxiety medicines that really worked, which is a whole other journey because if you guys have ever, tried to take some SSRIs, or have some medicine, like it takes some trial and error and nothing is just like a quick Band-Aid fix with anything mental health. And so that's super discouraging as you're going through it. And it's just.
And it puts you on a wave of emotions.
Yes. Oh my gosh, totally. It's a wild ride. That is for sure.
And I want to recognize the people too who are out there and who are getting up every single day and going to work even when it's really hard. Like maybe your personal life is impacting you. Maybe it's the job itself that's really hard for you, but you get up and you go because you know that this is what you have to do. And I think it's so brave that people are willing to do that and willing to put themselves, because I come from a place of understanding that some days you just don't want to do it and another option would be easier.
Yeah.
And that other option may seem either easier, it may look easier, but it isn't the better one. The better one is finding your way through it to the other side. And maybe that's finding a new career path. Maybe it's finding your way that you didn't think you could find your way through. And maybe the imposter syndrome is so hard right now and you come out the other side, you're like, what am I talking about? I knew I could do this. So yes. I do want to encourage those people, much like you experience, I've experienced, and I know a lot of people close to me have. Like, I'm proud of you. I think we both would be. That you woke up today and you decided, I'm going to go to work and I'm going to get through this, because that's not an easy decision. We want to look at a lot of our decisions in life and, deciding what you're going to eat for the day. Sometimes not easy. Deciding to go work out, also not easy. But one of the hardest decisions you make sometimes is getting your butt out of bed and saying, I have to go do this today.
Yeah. And you'll surprise yourself over and over and over again at how much you can do that. And like how strong you actually are. And asking for help is the bravest thing you could ever do. Asking for help is not giving up. It is actually the bravest thing that you could ever do. And we all have our different points when we finally let go and say, hey, I need help with this thing. And we're all on our different journeys. Thankfully, I had a great example in my mom, who I knew had gone to therapy, throughout my high school years and all that kind of stuff. So in my house, it was very normal to be going into that kind of setting and stuff. So in that way, I had it easier than a lot of people did. My asking for help was not maybe as scary as it is for others who maybe grew up in an environment where therapy was not talked about, mental health was not talked about, all of that. And I'm so thankful to be a part of the conversations that are hopefully breaking down those stigmas.
No, it is, because even if you listen, family is what you make it, right? If you don't have a strong family bond, you can have friends. And if you don't have friends, there's support systems that you can find in groups that are free. And there's so many different ways to find the help that you need.
Yeah.
And talking about it allows us to also be a support system that, like, if you are ever going through it, I guarantee both of us will sit here and say, reach out to us and we'll try and help.
Yes.
We may not be great at it, but we will be there and we will help you find your way through, like we're fumbling our way through all the time.
Totally. We are surviving, not thriving, guys.
Yes.
Like, it's not like we have everything figured out, but I think the first step in kind of, maybe moving towards a healthier space is just having that Me Too moment. Having that, like, I don't know if I have any advice for you, but I can say with 100% certainty, I have been there and I have felt that before, and you are not alone in that feeling.
And I think that's why it's so important for people to share. And gosh, I get so mad when people get upset for people sharing their emotions and feelings. I'm like, no, you know why? Because there's at least 5 people right here who said, I felt that.
Yes.
I needed that.
Of course.
We're
of course.
in a space that we should be vulnerable and allow ourselves to feel the things that we're feeling.
Yes.
We are in 2024. This is not the
Make
1800s.
feelings cool again.
Gosh. Yeah. Also in dating too. Can we do that also? Oh my goodness.
And that. Absolutely.
Now we're speaking of things that are overarching and over experiences, but day-to-day life, as we just mentioned, how getting up some days is just really hard. What are some things that you do that really help serve you to get back to a good place when maybe you kind of fall out of step a little bit?
So I will say that being on the medicine that I am on has been such a humongous blessing. And I will admit that I am on medicine as many times as it takes to, again, continue to help break down the stigma around it. And I'm very, very thankful that I did find something that works for me. But on the hard days, which I still do have, of course, it's not like I'm like walking around like a robot with no emotions or anything, because we definitely don't want to get to that point either. I've realized that the longer I try to pretend that I'm okay, the longer the funk sticks around. Yeah. Confronting the bad feelings, quote, bad feelings, which are actually just like very natural human feelings, whether it's anger or sadness or disappointment or frustration or jealousy, all of these things that could be labeled as bad. I've learned through therapy, it's just like, let's make everything neutral. And that includes the happy and the joy and the excitement. Like, everything's neutral. This is all just like human stuff that every single person on the planet goes through. And so when I learned not to shame myself for feeling the disappointment and the sadness and the anger and all of those things, I realized that just letting myself sit in it for a second and like naming it and looking it in the eye allows me to move on a lot faster.
Yes.
Have you ever dealt with that?
I'm saying yes, because when I was talking to Dr. Russ Kennedy, he was talking about this and this experience and why it's really important, especially to do with anxiety, to really feel it and allow yourself to recognize it. Yeah. Because it's in your body and you can't do anything about it being there. So you got to deal with it head on.
Yes.
And yes, there's been moments where I'll have a really hard day and I typically wear my little house slippers, but I'll take them off and I'll put my feet on the ground and I just kind of stand there and I literally allow whatever the feeling is to like hit me and go past me.
Yeah.
Because if I keep moving, it's like I'm running away from it.
Yeah.
I could be so busy and oftentimes it hits in our busiest moments, right?
Yep.
Or when there's so much chaos around us.
Yep.
So I have to intentionally like sit and say, hit me. Let it come through and go out so then I can keep moving. Because if I keep running away, it just piles and piles and gets worse.
Yes. And I think that that's a lot of where like the burnout stuff, those burnout symptoms start to come into play. What was the quote that I shared on Instagram a couple weeks ago that you were like, it's about this. Let me look it up.
Oh yeah.
Because it was so spot on. I
both love quotes.
I love a quote. I love a quote. I think it's why we love country music and love lyrics so much too, because we were the Pinterest generation. How many hours have you spent scrolling on Pinterest, like pinning, all these inspiration? I love them.
Yeah, and because it was the original way for us to notice that somebody else was feeling what we were feeling.
Yes.
If there was a quote about it, I was like, oh, somebody else felt that?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. It's like someone else wrote something that I haven't been able to put into words.
Yep.
So the quote that we bonded over a couple weeks ago was, "You can't heal if you keep pretending like it doesn't hurt."
Yeah.
And that's shout out We the Urban, one of my favorite quote accounts on Instagram.
That's that one. Do you happen to follow Rainbow Salt?
I don't know if I do. Should I?
Yeah, you should.
Okay.
Yeah, you should.
I'm going to follow
phenomenal.
as soon as I leave.
But yes, because it's so important to feel pain because again, we have been taught. I've had an episode on here where I had a childhood therapist on and she works in childhood trauma, Dr. Amy Tran, and she was like, you have to unlearn things. And that is the thing we have to unlearn is that we have to stop running away from the pain and just kind of let it hit us because when we do, it moves through faster.
Yeah.
The further we avoid it, the longer it takes to move through it.
Absolutely. And I have friends who, they just are people who are used to being like the bright light. I think that was one of the things that I really struggled with when I first started kind of realizing the depression within me, realizing the anxiety within me. I get a lot of comments about like, you're so positive all the time. You're such a bright light. My favorite compliment, don't get me wrong. But I also want to be really real with anyone who comes across my content or listens to my show on the highway or whatever it is. Like, I'm not that way all the time. I'm so happy and I wear it like a badge of honor that I can be that for so many people. But I want to do it in a way that's like, I also have really shitty days. And I'm also like a very normal, because there's a very fine line between like being a positive person and toxic positivity, right?
There is.
We can't walk around saying, oh, it's going to be okay to someone going through like the hardest season of their life. Like I want to hold space for that hardest season of your life. I want to say that sucks. And while I do believe it is going to be okay, that's not what I'm going to throw at you when you're in the thick of it, you know? So it's kind of holding both things at the same time. Yeah.
And two things can be true. Another episode
yes, they
that happened here.
2 things can be true.
That was another one. Yes. That's a very real thing because it was really early on when I was sharing and first started the show. A lot of people were like, gosh, you're so positive. You live such a fun life. And that's when I quickly realized, oh, I'm only presenting one side of this.
Yeah.
And that was my fault. Not because I meant to, but just because I was scared to show the other side. And that was also super early on and like, what's happening to my life? What are we doing here?
Yeah.
But it was important for me to be like, yes. And you know what? Most days I want to live life to every extent of the fullest. And even on my hard days, I still try to because that's how I get out of my hard days.
Yep.
That's how I find my funk out. Like people find different strategies and how they work. And I'm just really good at sharing that stuff in its entirety So it looks really pretty and like it has a really pretty bow on it, you know?
Right. Absolutely.
But then you see a video of me crying and they're like, why is she posting a crying video? I'm like, because you saw 50 videos of me laughing.
Yeah.
And we need to know that that's not just it, you know? Like,
absolutely. That's not an accurate representation of life in general, any human's journey, but it's also not an accurate representation of us. And do you still get nervous posting like the sad things or the admitting like I'm having a bad day or I'm grumpy or whatever? Because I totally still get nervous about that stuff.
Oh, yeah. Well, honestly, the reason I get nervous is because there's a group of people in the world who see that as pandering or see it as wanting sympathy or wanting this. I'm like, no, guys, I got a therapist for that. I got friends. I got a support system that I lean on when this is happening.
Yeah.
But it's important to me that through that, despite people wanting to be hateful for it, that I still share it. That's what's hard for me is that I just know there's a group of people that aren't going to approve.
Yeah. Not
totally. Not that I need their approval, but absolutely. It's just part of that.
I think that what I need to remind myself of constantly when I am sharing, you know, I'm grumpy today or whatever it is, like I'm in a funk, I'm having a hard week, whatever. You know, I share that thing just to say me too.
Yeah.
But what I've also learned, like going back to the two things can be true at the same time. Something that I do not subscribe to is it could always be worse, because while that is true, that doesn't mean that I'm not allowed to have a bad day.
Yeah.
Because my life could be way worse. I am in such a humongously privileged position. I recognize all I have around me to be so freaking grateful for. And I'm also allowed to have a bad day. I'm also allowed to be disappointed or, you know, want something that I can't have or whatever it is. And I think there is a giant pressure that we have to work through constantly. And I think social media makes it harder, of just this voice in our head of like, stop complaining. And going back to the like, two things can be true at the same time. I know that I have so much to be grateful for, and also this sucks.
Yeah. It is.
Two things can be true at the same time. And so for me, that's where like my fear comes from, is if I admit to having a bad day or being sad or being angry, whatever it is, someone's going to think that I'm ungrateful. And that is a big fear of mine.
And it's not the case. It's just, again, yes, you can be really sad and experiencing this life moment while also know that I have a roof over my head and I have clean water and I have food to eat.
Of course.
Know that those things are true while also not dismissing the experiences that you have to grow as a human being.
Yeah, and totally comes back to what we were saying. Like the more you can name and face the, you know, sadder parts of life, the more you can move on from them, the faster you can move on from them. So
it's so true. Gosh, you know, there's just so many levels to the mental health space too. And one thing that I think is really important is just in hearing this, I hope you guys know that you're not alone.
Yeah.
That's the overarching theme amongst all of it is that whatever you're battling on any of these levels, other people are experiencing it. And that's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's the coolest.
Listen, it's always been true that two people are suffering really love company. So, you know,
misery loves company, baby.
We do, and that's okay because sometimes you're gonna suffer because that's how life works.
Yeah, totally. And I think,
as much to our dismay, we would love life to be easy, but it's not.
It's really not. It's never gonna be. And I think that, you know, if there's anyone listening right now that is even trying to convince themselves that your situation is so unique to you that, you know, maybe this doesn't apply to you. I promise, I don't care what your unique situation is in your brain. Like, I promise you there is someone out there that has experienced something similar enough to be able to relate and to be able to connect on. You're really never alone. Never, ever, ever.
No. And sometimes it just means putting yourself out there a little bit more than you maybe want to. Because that's scary.
Yeah. Oh, so scary.
But
so
also
scary.
make the phone call. Like if you are struggling, I don't care who you're afraid to tell or talk to, make the phone call, because also 9 times out of 10, that person is going to be like, yeah, I got your back.
Yeah, totally. And circling it back to like what we do when we work in music and stuff, maybe you don't have the words for how you feel, but between quotes and lyrics of songs, I promise you can find something that makes you feel seen and makes you feel heard and understood. And if that's the conversation starter with someone in your life that you can send, like if you feel comfortable sending a quote or a song to someone in your life to start the conversation of like, I don't know how to explain this to you, but this is how I feel. I think that could be like a great little tool to use of like, hey, I haven't figured out a way to talk about this openly, but I just heard this or I just read this and it kind of sums up where I'm at right now.
Oh, that's such a good idea.
It could be a good,
love that. This is how
open door.
Okay, this is how we're going to end. I love that you said that. I want you to share your 2 favorite either song or album and your 2 favorite people to follow on Instagram that will help you.
Oh my gosh. Favorite album that I am listening to on repeat right now, Cassie Ashton's Made from the Dirt, is spectacular. Okay. It is so good, you guys. The title track, it gives me the same feelings that Maren Morris's Hero did, her debut album.
So good.
It was like, of course, the singles are just absolute smashes, but then the deep cuts, Made from the Dirt, Cassie Ashton. If you don't know her, you
voice
got
is
to.
Insane,
unbelievable.
too.
And she's so like uniquely herself. It's just so, I'm obsessed with her. So that's one album that I can't take off repeat. And honestly, like I love a sad song. So for me,
Ooh, sad girl,
sad girl
energy.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. I mean, Adele's 21 is constantly on repeat for me. It's not new, obviously, but like that one is just always something I could listen to it all day, every day, and never get sick of it.
Those are good ones. Okay. So the 2 that come to mind for me, like right now in this moment, in this season of life.
Yeah.
I've got The Good Witch by Macy Peters. I said that
wrong.
The
Okay.
Good Witch. The Good Witch by Macy Peters.
Okay. I haven't heard it yet.
Great album, pop music.
Love it.
And because of the phase of life I'm in, you want to talk about a healing album. Yes. Girl's got lyrics for days.
Oh, that makes me happy for you. Yay.
So good. And then the other one is Jessie Murph's.
Okay.
Her new album, That Ain't No Man, That's the Devil.
Dude, she's got some heat on her right now.
That voice and the way that she does things. Oh my goodness. I don't know how to do it. Yeah, so good. All right, now give me your 2 Instagram accounts to follow because we need good energy on our feeds.
Absolutely. Okay, so earlier, the quote that we were talking about, We the Urban, super inspirational, very kind of what we were talking about, like no toxic positivity. It's just like feels very supportive.
Yes.
And you're going to read what you need to hear on any given day. We the Urban is fantastic. And then one of my favorite writers and poets right now, you can find her at Mary Oliver's Drunk Cousin. Her name is Lindsay Rush, and she's just incredible. She has one of my favorite poems and like pieces of words put together ever. It's called Cracks of Light, and it is just spot on for like, I have it on my phone background. Like she posts some really, really wonderfully relatable, funny, uplifting things. So find her at Mary Oliver's Drunk Cousin. She's phenomenal.
I love that name.
I know.
Such a funny. That is uplifting in the name.
I know. I love it. Okay, what about you?
The 2 that I have, one is Zana Keithley, and it's spelled like Zanna and then Keith Lee, Ley.
Okay.
And she posts so many quotes. And my favorite part about her, though, is every single day she posts affirmations on her stories.
Oh,
and I'll say them out loud to myself because it's kind of hard to come up with, besides the affirmations of like, I am kind, I am smart, I'm important.
Yeah.
Shout out the help. But she has ones that are just really like, here's today. She's like, I am grateful. I'm really bad at speaking
You're all
today.
good.
I am grateful for all that I have and all that's on its way to me right now. I focus my vision on creating a life of true joy and fulfillment. Like, so she's just really good at creating things that you need to say, but you don't know how to put the words into.
Yeah, I love
and
that.
those pop up every day. Even if I'm at work, I'll just read them and I'm reading them in my brain to myself.
Love it. Immediate follow.
And then all of ours are like, we're both going to be following our 2
Yeah,
things.
totally.
And then the other one is Rainbow Salt, which I had mentioned. And she's also just a beautiful writer. Both of them just put things into words that her name's Bianca. I'm not going to try and butcher her last name. But they both put so many beautiful things into words that I never could in that way. So both of them were really good follows.
Love that.
Yay. So joy on our feeds. That's how we're ending this little thing today. But Ania, thank you so much for coming on and being vulnerable and sharing your story with me.
Yes, Morgan, I'm honored and I'm so proud of you. From one person in the industry to another, I know how hard you are working and I see it every single day. And like doing a podcast like this, not only is a ton of work from the setup to the booking guests to the editing to the posting on socials about it, like that's a ton of work, but you're also tackling some like really, really important conversations and ones that people need to hear. And that honestly like takes a lot of emotional and mental work. And so just know that I'm really proud of you and I'm happy for you, and what you're doing is just really important. So thank you for spending all of that time doing it.
You're going to make me cry.
The world needs it. So
okay, but also the world needs you. So keep being you, because as much as I know that there are hard days, you are such a light and you're a great person in this world and a great person to have a platform. So please keep being you.
Let's do it.
Don't ever let anybody change you.
We're going to keep on keeping on.
Yeah, we are.
Thanks, Morgan.
Thank you.